Jerry from Britical Saiyans here, and today I'm going to be showing you my Yamcha deck profile. He's back, guys. We brought Yamcha back. I mean, technically it's a new Yamcha deck, but I also think it's an update. But anywho, we'll just go into it, because otherwise I'm going to be here while arguing semantics. So, to start with, we have his auto. So when this card attacks, you look up 2 cards from the top of your deck, add up to 1 red card amongst your hand, and then place the remaining on the bottom. Well, place the remaining in the drop area, and then this card gains 5k power for the turn. I put them to the bottom by accident in the game. That's me being silly. So for the Awaken, when you're on 5 or less, you can draw 1, get an energy back, and flip them over. So pretty useful, because it's not 4 life, it's 5, so you get that slight advantage. And we're going to Yamcha Supersonic Striker. So on this side, his first auto is the same as before. You look at top 2, add 1, drop 1, gain 5k. And then the secondary auto is if you have a red unison card in play, when your opponent takes damage from a non-keyword skill on your battle card or unison cards, deal 1 damage to your opponent, then negate the skill for the game. So that, as you can imagine, is very useful because Yamcha is still a burn deck. So if you do something like swing, where is he? Where are you? This guy. So use his effect to deal 2 damage to your opponent by killing a battle card. Then this activates and they take a 3rd damage. So it's pretty nasty, but really nice at the same time. And to start with, we got the unison cards. So we have 2 copies of Shin Shenron Unison of Calamity. This is the preferred unison for the deck. I only have 2, so I'm running 2. But obviously, if you have more, run more. So his permanent is your red cards can attack your opponent's battle cards in active mode. Hence the fact it's preferred for this deck. He has a +1 of active main. Choose up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards, and again -15 for the turn. So you minus 2 of your opponent's cards by 15k, which could potentially kill them. And then you can -2 to do second active main, which is look at your opponent's hand, choose up to 1 battle card 25k power or less, and discard it. So you get a cheeky peek at your opponent's hand, and then you can get rid of the cards on top of it. Nice. And of course this +1 is pretty dirty as well, so hence the fact this guy is really good, just in general, and because we want to be dealing like hitting battle cards to deal damage, his permanent is very useful. So next, for the unisons, we have 3 copies of Vegeta Elite Unison. So when this card attacks, you add a marker to it, then choose which one of your opponent's battle cards and it gets -5k for the turn. Still pretty useful. Makes it easier to kill one of your opponent's battle cards using your effects and then do damage through that. But obviously it's preferred to have this guy, so I think if I had a personal preference I would just go 3-2 because Vegeta's still useful to have, so still worth running him. And his active main is you -1, choose one of your red battle cards or leader cards and it gains 5k power and can attack your opponent's battle cards in active mode for the turn. So again, gives you the chance to hit things in active mode and gives a nice little power boost to something. But obviously the difference is with Shin Shenron, it's just a permanent, you don't need to lose a marker, and it's all of your battle cards instead of just 1. So swings and roundabouts, I guess. So going into the extra cards now, we'll start off with 2 copies of After Image Technique. So counter attack if the leader is red. Choose up to one of your cards and it gains plus 40k power for the battle. Then choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards and it gets minus 10k power for the turn. So it doesn't outright stop the attack, it just makes it a lot harder to hit because you're gaining 40k and then ideally you're taking 10k away from whatever's attacking you or just something else you don't want to come at you. And it's a sparking negate, so you can take a life once you have 5 or more and drop instead of paying the 1 energy. So it's an optional thing. We have 1 copy of the Final Guardian. So this is counter attack if the leader is red, negate the attack, then choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards. Well, choose up to one of your battle cards, not your opponent's. That gains plus 5k for the turn. So you negate and then you give something 5k just to give it that little bit of protection. Its permanent is that you can activate it from the drop area by paying the cost and removing itself plus a red card from in your hand from the game. But it also does say you can only activate this once per turn, so you can't just be like, oh, I'll pay 1 to negate normally, then pay 1 to do the other version. It's just once. One time you can do that, the second time it's from drop. But they have to be separate turns. So, but it's just useful, gives you one of your battle cards a little bit of protection if you want to keep it on the board. Hence I run it. Next we have a copy of Wolffang Fist. So again, counter attack if the leader is mono red. Choose up to one of the attacking battle cards or leader cards, ignore a barrier and it gets minus 15 for the battle. And then its permanent is if you had a red unison card in play, you can activate it without paying cost. But the main highlight is whatever's attacking you just outright loses 15k. So if it's weak enough it dies, if it's a leader card it just goes to 0, or you just take a nice bit of pressure off and then you carry on. So plus it's easy to get unison card in play because we have 5, so you can just chuck it out there and stop them or slide them down. And finally, extra cards, we have 2 copies of Peel Off Missile. So counterplay if you have a red unison card in play. If the battle card being played has 15 on power or less, it's placed in the owner's drop area instead of being played. Then choose up to one of your leader cards and it gains 5k power for the turn. So this is very useful in the fact that you can get rid of something coming into play and give your leader 5k. So obviously if you're awakened you'll just become a 20k base. And then its permanent is if all your energy is mono red, you can activate this card counter skill from your hand without paying its cost by discarding 2 other cards instead. So you can just go, well, I don't have the 2 energy, but I do have 2 cards I don't need, so play Peel Off Missile, discard 2, carry on. Which is useful, but most of the time I feel like you would just pay the 2 to do its effect, because discarding 2 can be very hurtful. So going into the battle cards now, and starting with our many 1-drops. We have 2 copies of Bulma Out Adventuring. So this is a super combo. Its auto is if your leader is red and you and your opponent have a total of 8 or less life, when this card is used in the combo, you draw 1, then if it's your turn, choose up to 1 red earthling with an energy cost of 1 from your hand and play it. So gets you a 1-drop on the board, and it goes between you and your opponent's life, so as long as the total is 8 you can use it, which is very useful because if you've been knocking your opponent down and you've only taken a couple yourself, just like, well, there we go, Bulma. And then its active main is once per turn, choose one of your mono red battle unison cards and it gains 5k power. So just adds a bit of power to your board, which is the main thing. Next we have 3 copies of Dependable Mom Bulma. So it's got 5k, its active main is you switch it to rest mode, you draw a card, then you choose a battle card and gain 5k power for the turn. So on turn 1, if you do just play this out straight away, you can give it to itself just to draw a card. Ideally you would play it out with this, to be fair. So you could just go combo, place, and then rest, draw a card, 5k. But it's just in there as a bit of draw power, and there's a nifty 1-drop to play out. So, just my own personal tech. Next we have 3 copies of the gang's Femme Fatale. So this is when this card is played, you look at 5 cards from the top of your deck, add to 1 Earthling with an energy cost of 4 less from among them to your hand, then shuffle your deck. So it's just a bit of search power, and pretty much every battle card in here is Earthling. So well, I think every battle card in here is Earthling, even if it's not human. So yeah, you just place, add a battle card to your hand. What's not to love? Next we have 2 copies of Mastermind Martial Virtuoso. So, and he has counter attack. If you have red using card in play, your opponent can't attack with battle cards 25k power or more for a turn, then play this card. So Roshi's just in here to kind of like save you towards endgame. If your opponent's playing out a bunch of cards to try and kill you with a lot of beefy power, you can be like, well, how about no, and you have to hit me with your little guys, which is much easier to deal with. And then you just have a 5k body on the board. So even if you combo him away, it's still active for the turn, which is very useful. And finally in our 1-drops we have 3 copies of the 1-drop Poir Yamcha's Sidekick. Don't know why I thought I had 1 when I was clearly holding 3. So if it's your turn, when this card is used in a combo with a red Yamcha, it gains 5k combo power for the battle. So as long as you swing with a Yamcha, this is a 10k combo. What's not to love? Considering Yamcha's our main pressure unit, makes it better. Next we have 3 copies of 2-drop Bulma the Bunny Girl. So she has unique and blocker, and its auto is when one of your red Earthling cards other than a Bulma card is removed from your battle area by an opponent's skill. You can play this card from your hand. If you do, play it to 1 red Earthling only battle card with an energy cost of 4 or less from your drop, and well, yeah, there you go. I don't know why I was carrying on that sentence, but yeah, so you can look for pretty much any 4 or less battle card in this deck. There's only like 1 exception, which is this guy, but other than that, if your opponent gets rid of 1 of your battle cards, whether it's like sending it to the warp, the energy, just outright KO skill, you get a free blocker, and then you get a card back, which is useful because you need board presence for this deck to keep going. And you could just try and work into it. If you know your opponent's going to clear your board, you can be like, well, I'll combo this card off because then I can play it for free. Next we have 2 copies of Everybody's Pal Yamcha. So when this card attacks, you look up 3 cards from the top of your deck, choose which 1 Earthling card among them, add to your hand, then shuffle your deck. So again, this deck is basically nothing but Earthlings. The 1 exception to his rule with battle cards is this guy. Other than that, every other battle card is Earthling. So, and because he does it on attack, it means you can just keep doing it every turn. And with it being 50k, he's always going to hit your opponent's leader unless you give it a buff. So, you could run more of this. I probably would, but in all fairness, like 2 seems to work out. With the amount of search power you have as well, you're not really going to struggle to find him. So next we've got 3 copies of Innocent Princess Chi-Chi. So she also has unique and blocker, and the active main of if you have a red Unison card with 3 or more markers in play, you can play it from your hand, so you don't even need to pay 2. And the markers part isn't an issue, because Vegeta you have to pay 2 and then you gain 1 when he attacks. Shin you have to pay 3 anyway, so you either attack with Vegeta, gain a marker, play Chi-Chi, or you play this, play Chi-Chi. And it just gives you a free blocker, which obviously is useful, because if you've tapped out to gain the 3 markers, it gives you another battle card you can play, and gives you some defense. Hence I run like 3 of it, because I just want to see it, and get free use out of it. And finally in 2 drops we have 2 copies of our other super combo, which is Sideline Assist Bulma. And this is just a generic one. If your lead's red and your life's at 4 less, you draw a card. I just picked 4 less life one and picked Bulma because she's Earthling. So yeah, this is the more changeable one. I could potentially run 4 of this one, but because it works between you and your opponent's life, it's a bit annoying depending on when you need to play it out. Especially if your opponent's trying to keep on like 6 life and you're going down to 4, then you can't use it to combo, so this just lets you come to play with combo. No issues. Next we got our 3 drops for the deck. So to start with we have 3 copies of Bardock the Resolute. So this guy is very good for the deck because it's a burn deck. So he has Double Strike and Unique with 15k. His first auto is if your leader is red, when your opponent's life is added to the hand or placed in a drop by a skill, you may play this card from your hand. So if you do a bit of burn damage, like from this guy, or you do have the leader's effect, you could technically do it with. And then there's also the Gohan here. Or anything else that you decide to run in the deck. Maybe you run the Vegeta GT. Can't remember its name off the top of my head, but it's like 3 cost. If it kills a battle card, you deal damage. So any sort of skill like that would deal damage to your opponent through an effect, you can immediately play this guy out. And then it does have the auto of once per turn. When your opponent activates a counter skill, you switch him to active mode. So if you say swing with him, your opponent goes negate, you're like, okay, try again. Or if it's in there, like they decide to do a counterplay, you could be like, well, I'll get him back to active mode because I can. And yeah, like this is one of those things that I don't know if the meta version of the deck would run it because I've not really looked, but I saw it and I was like, that is definitely going in Yamcha, 100%. Putting that in, running it as a free off because it's got unique, so obviously you have to time when you play him out, but once he's on the board he's a free pressure unit, and if he dies, oh well, do burn damage and play another one if you need to. So next we have 4 copies of our main man for the deck, Yamcha at 100%. So this is basically our win con because of how the deck works. So he's got 19k and the active main of once per turn you burst 5. If your leader is a red Earthling card, for the duration of the turn this card gains 6k power, can't have its attacks negated, deals 2 damage to your opponent if it kills a battle card. So obviously you just swing this at your opponent's battle cards. Hence having the unisons are really useful, because with Shin Shenron you can just weaken something and then Yamcha can swing at it without any issues. Or you have Vegeta on the other hand, which could go attack, minus it by 5k, then take the marker off, give Yamcha the 5k and he will attack an active battle card. So with that, or if you do it in chain of his own effect, Yamcha goes to like 30k power with Vegeta, which is really useful and a lot of pressure, because if your opponent can't negate, you obviously can combo on top, and then your opponent has to get over that. So, and because it does 2 damage whenever you KOs a battle card, it makes him like our main pressure, because if you haven't done that, the leader's effect as well, you can kill something, deal 3rd damage, and there you go. So this is our main man for the deck, hence we have him at 4, because you want to play him out, and if you can help it, you play multiple just to add more pressure. The only downside is you're milling 5, so keep that in mind. And our final 3-drop for the deck is 3 copies of Yamcha Merciless Barrage. So this one also has 15k. He has counterplay, so you can't activate any other counter skills for the turn when you activate this counter skill. You choose up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards, you get minus 15k power, and then you play him out. And if you have a red unison card and play with 2 or more markers on it, you can activate its counter skill without paying its cost. So, gives you a free 15k body on the board, as long as you have a unison with the markers out. And then you minus 2 things by 15k, which means it's also easier for you to try and kill stuff or to just survive your opponent's turn. Next we have 2 copies of the 4-drop Yamcha the Desert Hyena. So, this is a wordy one. He's got 20k power. Permanent is, if your leader is red, he gains an additional 10k power, so it becomes 30k. And he has 2 autos, both of which are once per turn. So, during the battle where this card is attacking, when your opponent activates a counter skill, you switch them to active mode. So you can be like, attack, they counter, great, swing them back up. His secondary auto, again, once per turn. When this KOs an opponent's battle card, switch it to active mode, and he gains 10k and triple strike for the turn. So that obviously is really useful and really like threatening, because Shin Shenron, you can just attack battle cards anyway. Vegeta, give it 5k attack a battle card. So I feel like it works better with Vegeta. I realised more that Vegeta works well with this deck kind of better than Shenron, just because of the 5k bonus. But you give him the 5k for Vegeta, 35k as an opponent's battle card. If you kill it, he becomes a... goes back to active mode, becomes a 45k triple strike, which you then swing at your opponent to try and kill them, if you haven't already. So, but again, there's only 2 just because of deck spacing, and there's enough search power to make it easy to get to your hand. And our final card for the deck is 3 copies of the 6-drop Miraculous Comeback Ultimate Gohan. So he has 25k power and double strike. His permanent is, if you only have 3 or less cards besides this card in your hand, reduce this card's energy cost in your hand or battle area by 4, so it becomes a 2-drop, which you pay 2 red. And then his auto is, when this card KOs your opponent's battle card, inflict 2 damage to your opponent. So this is a alternative way to deal the 2 damage, or 3 if you haven't used this effect. And if your hand's low as well, you can get them out quite easily. It is just it is mostly just there as a backup for our Yamcha at 100%, because they both deal 2 damage. They both can just really punt the hell out of a battle card, and because they do the 2 damage, it means our burn damage is going up a lot faster, which is what we want because it's the Yamcha burn deck. But even if you don't attack the leader, he still has double strike, so you can either do 2 damage from effect or just do an outright 2 damage. But I found that it's not heavily relied upon. You could get away decreasing or taking it out. I like having it in as a backup because the other downside to Yamcha at 100% is you're milling 5. Whereas this guy, all you need to do is play him and you're good to go. So, but it's all down to personal preference at the end of the day. And that's just mine. And with that, guys, that is my Yamcha deck profile. So, thank you all very much for watching. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below because we enjoy seeing them. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye.